Are you tired of being weighed down? Have you fallen asleep on your health? This is your wake up call with my dad, Keith, my husband, Kyle, and me, Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. This is your wake up call. It is day 167, and it is Saturday morning. We've got everybody here, Keith, Ashley, and Kyle. And this morning we're just gonna kind of just chat a little bit. We've had some pretty structured discussions the past, week. So, figured we just kind of talk this morning. And actually, I think Ashley and I had kind of thrown around an idea to talk about this morning, but the other day, we were, watching YouTube because, honest to goodness, we watch more online content, from anything than we ever do traditional television. But there was a video that popped up that was kind of interesting, and I'll let Ashley talk more about that, but it was specifically about Japanese school lunches, and it was pretty crazy. I won't say crazy. It was amazing what Japanese school lunches look like.
You know how sometimes you see something or you read something or you hear about something and you just can't get it off of your brain? I literally watched this like 2 weeks ago, and I have been thinking about it all the time. And I'm not really sure why. I know why, because it was really cool, but I don't know. I was just thinking about ways that maybe how we can implement some of these things in our lives too. But if you get on YouTube and you just search Japanese school lunch, the first video that comes up is a pretty good video. It's called School Lunch in Japan. It's not just about eating. That one's pretty good. But the one that I really like is the second one that you'll find. And it's called Kaiyu Shoku, The Making of Japanese School Lunch. This was posted a few weeks ago. It's got 300,000 views on it. And it goes a little bit more in depth than that first one. So if you're going to watch one, I recommend watching the second one. It's like 22 minutes long, but it's really cool. But it basically talks about this public school lunch program in Japan, and it shows everything from like how it's cooked and how it's served, and what the kids think about it. And the first thing that was really interesting to me is that there is no cafeteria. All the kids eat in their classroom. So the people who cook the food pile everything up on these carts, and either the kids come get the cart or the cart is delivered to their classroom. And when you see this school, everything is so clean and so nice, and the first thing you think is, this has got to be a rich school. This has got to be a school that's got a lot of money coming into it. But what you find out later in the video is that this video was made in a very middle class, almost poor region. This is not a school that is rich. It just looks so nice because the kids are taught from a very early age to take care of what they've got. Anyway, so they cart this lunch into the classroom, and then the video starts talking about how these kids are taught from kindergarten how to serve lunch to their peers. So the cart rolls in, the teacher doesn't even touch it, has nothing to do with it, and the kids suit up. They've got these gowns and hair nets and face masks and stuff, and they serve lunch to all of their peers, which it looks like there's 30 kids in this classroom. And all the kids sit down with their food, and they all wait until everybody has their food. And then this little girl stands up and she's reading a piece of paper, and it lists everything that they're eating, all the ingredients, where they came from, and why they're good for you. Like this day in particular, they were having like ginger chicken or something, and the little girl's reading like, you know, the vegetables came from blah blah farm, and the chicken came from this place, and there's ginger, and ginger, you know, helps prevent us getting colds, and like, you know, and this is an everyday thing. And then they, you know, everybody sits down and they all eat together and they all clean up together, and it's just this really alien looking thing. It looks nothing like our schools do. It's really
And the food, this is the part that trips me out, because, you know, their cost per, they did a cost breakdown of the food, and their cost per kid was very low.
very low.
I mean,
yes.
it was
And it was
crazy how low it was.
I mean, it had 2 or 3 different dishes to it, big bowl of soup and rice and the chicken. I mean, it was a good size.
And kids were encouraged that if they were still hungry,
To eat more.
to go back and get more. Because they do realize that not every kid is the same. There were going to be some kids who didn't eat a whole lot, but there were some kids who would eat more, and so they were encouraged to eat everything that had been brought to them. I mean, they didn't force them to get up and eat, but, you know, they give everybody an adequate amount to start with, and then if they want more, they can come back and get more. I mean, kids finished their plates. For the most part, I didn't really see anybody leave any food over. It was all
And
they.
this thing was packed with vegetables. They had some kind of soup that had just a ton of vegetables in it, and like I said, of course there was some meat, but it wasn't like this huge amount either. Nothing was deep fried. Like, so as you get into the video, they start interviewing the woman who plans. She's the nutrition person or whatever. They have guidelines in the state, and she has to go by those guidelines. And so then she starts talking about how she plans the menus, and she's like, you know, I have to meet these nutrition guides, and most days I meet them 100%. And I plan menus a month at a time, and most of the time within that month, we rarely repeat a dish. And also, she makes sure whatever they're eating are in season. So she makes sure whatever fruits and vegetables they're using is in season, which means 2 things. One, that means their ingredients are cheaper because they're not having to source from other countries, mostly. And also, they're more nutritious. Any time a vegetable or fruit is able to ripen on the vine, it's just, or whatever it grows on, it's just more nutritious, you know. And then one of the coolest things she says is, and I try not to have meat on the menu every single day. I watched it again this morning to refresh my brain on it, and it's exactly what she says. I try not to have meat every single day. And then she says, and I switch it up, and sometimes we have tofu, sometimes we have egg, you know, but we don't have it every single day. And so
Imagine, I mean, would you ever hear that at a school lunch here?
No.
Keith, when you were growing up, what did y'all have for lunch in school?
You know, I think over the last 50 years in this country, everything it's been subsidized by the government, so you really, it wasn't a whole lot different as far as, you always had, whatever the government was trying to push. And I think that's kind of stayed the course, over the last several decades. Is, if the government had a surplus of peanut butter, then you had a lot of peanut butter, or cheese or whatever, whatever was going on at that time. And, it was probably a little better than it is today, but it was real similar to today, I would imagine, because it's all government based, whatever the government's trying to push. And that's kind of sad.
It is.
It is.
I mean, some of the lunches I remember, I specifically remember having on a consistent basis, spaghetti smothered in cheese, because, they a layer of cheese on top of it, and green beans were all in the same meal. Pizza and corn.
Pizza, you know what? That's right. Pizza always came with corn.
Rectangle pizza with corn.
What did you do? Just pull the cheese off of it?
Yeah, which was the worst. And chili and peanut butter and honey sandwich, which it wasn't even real honey, it was corn syrup. Like that. Yeah, like a golden syrup, but peanut butter and honey sandwiches. Trying to think of some of the other, hamburger, you had your hamburger today, which they were those government subsidized beef patties.
Right. Those, I always kind of liked them. And then as I got older, I realized they're more soy than they are meat. And they're super processed and not good for you, but I've always kind of liked them.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think some other meals that we had on a consistent basis. In middle school, we had a lot of turkey. We had a lot of turkey tetrazzini. A lot of turkey tetrazzini when I was in school.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up, most of the time, I brought a lunch. Mom would pack me a lunch when I was in elementary school. And there were certain days, like we always had the menu on the fridge, and there were certain days I would buy lunch, but it wasn't a lot. I think it was usually like pizza day or something I would buy lunch. And then when you got into middle school, everything became a la carte. So you could buy a slice of pizza and a thing of fries and ice cream because there's no regulating there anymore. I guess, they assumed once you turned the wise age of 12 that you didn't need help with your nutrition anymore, and they just let you kind of do what you want.
One thing I remembered coming along that was different is along about 1976, 77, somewhere in there, maybe 75. They started putting Coke machines, at school. Where up to that point, you drank milk. Sometimes you had chocolate milk or water, or maybe some kind of juice, but you didn't have any carbonated drinks. As I was growing up, but. Eventually towards the end of my time in high school, you had all the carbonated drinks and everything started popping up.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing between breaks and classes for us. Yep. People would line up to get Cokes. I'll tell you what, this just popped into my head, and I hadn't thought about it in years, but one of the things I always had with my lunch in middle school, because I remember it being, in elementary school, if I did buy lunch, I didn't have an option for drink because it was always milk. It was always milk.
Right. Yep.
And so I couldn't drink milk because of my allergies. I got to middle school and I remember being so excited because I had a choice between, the milk was still there, but then I also had a choice between Purity lemonade, which is just sugar.
Yeah, it's good though.
It's good though. It's got that tart citric acid. I mean, citric acid and sugar. But I also had jungle juice, which was my normal. Yeah, jungle juice is fruit punch, and it was sugary, but it was. I don't remember getting that on a consistent basis in middle school. Our middle school actually, when I first started middle school, was really good lunch. It was actually much better lunch than I got at elementary school because at the time they had a salad bar and a potato bar that you could choose.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder if they still have that.
No, they got rid of it about well, what was happening was, it was a really good salad bar. So, I would, go into the salad bar and fix me a really good. Actually, I ended up doing that a lot because, growing boy, I could get a little bit more mileage out of the salad bar than I could, the whatever sandwich they had that day. And so I'd go to the salad bar, make my salad, and, they'd have crackers and stuff, and that's what I'd normally have, while I had it. But, I also remember it got to where people were getting specific items, and they were like the Chinese noodles, the crispy noodles, and they would make a giant pile of those and then just douse it in sauce. So I think the school partly stopped it because they couldn't control portion size.
Right.
Potato bar was a really good choice because you just went out there and fixed your potato, and they had like chili and cheese and bacon and butter, sour cream, chives. So it was a full-on potato bar. But
as usual, people can make something healthy into something really unhealthy very fast. So it sounds like that was the case for both.
Yeah, it was. But like I said, there was just people were going out and part of the reason I would do like potato bar, and I know we're kind of sidetracking, but part of the reason I would do the potato bar is because I could get a bowl of chili. Like, it was a consistent. So I could get a potato and fix it up, but then there was also chili on there, so I could, give me a little bit of chili and be good. So, and that was my go-to on days when I didn't like the menu item. But yeah, back to the Japanese school. They work really, really hard to make sure those kids never have the same thing within a month's time span.
Well, in one part of the video, the person doing the interview behind the camera asks the nutrition lady, well, what happens when you fix something and the kids don't like it? What do you do? And this was her answer, and it was so interesting. She said, well, that happens sometimes. Sometimes we use an ingredient that the kids have never seen before, and there's a lot left at the end of lunch, and it makes me sad. But we keep on using it, and eventually the kids get used to it, and they eat it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that sounds pretty good to me,
Yeah, that would.
Y'all know we all have picky people who are close to us, and but another part that for a few years now, I've been fascinated watching some of these vegan YouTubers with their small children. There's a lot of people who will post like what my vegan toddler eats or what, and I get fascinated with these videos because I want to learn how these people keep their kids from getting too picky. You know, because all kids are going to be picky on certain things, right? But and one thing that I think helps situations that I've watched tons of these videos. A lot of them have like gardens in their backyard, and they'll let the child help with the garden from planting to picking. There's one woman I watch in Hawaii who lets her child, they have a smoothie every morning, and lets her child go out in the backyard and pick what he wants in his smoothie that morning. And so he'll pick kale and like cucumber and all this different stuff to go in his smoothie. And I think that's the key right there, is if the kids know where it came from and if they had any part in preparing it. And I think if you're... Go ahead.
That's one of the things that when you first started talking about this that stood out to me is they talk about where their food came from.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a whole lot different from the United States. Is adults don't even know where their food came from.
And frankly, a lot of them don't care.
Oh no, I don't think people even think about it.
No.
They don't care where their food comes from.
A lot of these schools in Japan also have gardens, and this school in particular, they said this garden can't feed the whole school, but it gives them experience and teaches them where their food comes from. Another school I watched had a much larger garden, and in the video, they had farmed potatoes, and that was what was on the menu. They were eating mashed potatoes from their farm that they grew themselves at school. So, taking part in where your food comes from and knowing where it comes from, I think makes a big difference, especially as a child when you're trying to figure out your world and how it works and where, why certain things are the way they are. And kids like to feel like they're part of things. And I think if you're making dinner and you just let your kid throw some ingredients in the bowl that you're mixing up and let them help stir, might make them want to taste it when it's done cooking. Or if you don't have a garden.
Like or at least to start the conversation to say, let's try our stuff that you made.
Yeah, you have
there's ownership in it.
That's what I'm saying. They like to feel like they're part of something. And even if you don't have a garden and you're going to the grocery store, why not let your toddler or child help put your groceries in the cart? If you're going through the produce aisle, hey, which of these apples looks good to you? Which ones do you want to buy? Well, here, let's put them in the bag. Let's put them in the cart. Even in that way, they're taking ownership of something that they're doing, And that's where Japan's getting it right. They're teaching their kids, one, to serve other people from a very young age. They serve each other lunch every single day. And two, reading the menu, tell them where it came from, and not just that, but why it's good for your body. If you went into any kind of American school today, they would have no clue where anything came from, which I don't most of the time. I just go to the grocery store, and also they could not tell you why an apple is good for them. Like they wouldn't even know what ginger was and why it's good for your body.
Yeah.
I can't. I've just been rolling this around in my brain for weeks and thinking about how that can be changed. But when the government is like ours, you can't just change it. You have to take ownership of your own family and teach them from home, because they're not going to get it at a public school, that's for sure.
Nope.
And it's always, I find that in my life, when I get kind of obsessed with something or something I can't stop thinking about, then other things in my life like line up with it. Like sometimes you'll learn a new word and then you keep hearing people use that word and you're like, where has this word been my whole life? Why have I not ever heard it before? it's like everything kind of, I don't know, this happens to me all the time. I'll learn something and then other things in my life line up with it, and it's really weird. So I watched this video on YouTube, and then a few weeks ago when I was driving to North Carolina, I guess this was last week. It's been a long week. I was driving to North Carolina, and somewhere in Tennessee or North Carolina, I don't even know where I was, this guy on the radio, the DJ, starts talking about how he got a hold of like his kid's school lunch menu at a public school. And he starts ranting and raving about how on one day of the week, their main dish item listed on the menu was breadsticks. And the sides were like carrot medallions that for sure probably came out of a can. Applesauce and like fries or something like that, all starchy, sugary based stuff. And he says, and the reason that they are allowed to make breadsticks a main dish is because they serve it with cheese sauce, and there's a little bit of protein in cheese, and that's how they get away with it. And it was crazy to me because, like I said, I'd already been thinking about all this Japanese stuff, and then I hear that on the radio, and it's like, man, the world is so weird sometimes. You know? I'd already been thinking about how crappy American school lunches are, and then I hear that on the radio, and it just affirms everything I'd been thinking about already, and it was kind of crazy. Anyway. So, if you're depending on the public school to educate your children on nutrition, it's just not going to happen. People don't care, and the government's going to do, like you said, Dad, they're going to push whatever it is they're making money on during the time. Or they're going to...
they've invested money.
Right.
Because okay, my grandmother operated a cafeteria. I've had family members who've been cafeteria operators for schools. And so a lot of times, you know, first off, they're given a very, very, very limited budget.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
They're, on top of it, they're given the option to buy government subsidized USDA products, or they can, purchase from a local food processor. Well,
nowadays it's cheaper to go with a processed food from the government than it ever will be to buy something from your farmer's market.
Exactly. And the government does that because they've invested money to subsidize these crops and these food items. They want a return on their investment. So, USDA Beef, is...
Let's be clear about...
It's usually peanut butter,
mm-hmm.
cheese, and, what was the third one? I just had it in my mind, but they're, it's always the same items all the way through the years.
Yeah.
It's going to be, corn is the other one.
Corn, there you go.
So, you can just about bet that every meal at a government institution is going to have peanut butter, corn, and, anything that the government is subsidizing for, their own gain is what it amounts to.
Yeah. And another thing that was very interesting, like I said before, they show these workers making the lunch. They get there early in the morning, and they have 3 hours to make the lunch for the whole school. American schools are getting things that are canned, things that are frozen, things that are basically prepared, and all these people have to do is heat them up. And that's how it's been for many years now. So it's all this highly processed, really gross stuff, like the hamburgers we were talking about. even when your child is having meat at school, it's not even really all meat, It's not even like a quality thing. It's a frozen chicken nugget out of the bag or a frozen beef patty that has who knows what in it. And this school in Japan, they're standing there peeling hundreds of potatoes. They show a meat delivery, and the person laughs about it because their meat delivery was like literally one tiny bag of like fish or chicken or something that they were going to put in their soup that was going to stretch out to like 300 people because this soup had so many vegetables and stuff in it. But the fact is it was fresh, and the amount wasn't huge. They were just using it to season their soup, basically. And the American behind the camera just thought that was so crazy and so weird,
Let me ask you this question. I hadn't seen the video. How many obese children in
there
the
were
30?
None.
They
all looked normal.
Yeah.
None.
That's what I
and
imagine.
That's another point I wanted to touch on. So this part of the country or state or whatever they're in is not a very rich part. Yet these children have nutrition and are not fat. And all you hear about in America are these food deserts where the poor areas in our country don't have access to any kind of fruits or vegetables, and they're all eating processed junk, and we're all just fat and getting fatter, especially in poor parts of our country. And here Japan is, in a poor part of their country, their kids are getting nutrition. They actually learn where their food comes from. There are farms in the area. It's just the comparison to America just makes me very sad sometimes when I see other countries like this. It just makes me very sad. I don't know. But yeah, I've just had this stuck in my mind, and I don't have kids yet, but I talk about having them a lot, and growing up, I think I had more nutrition knowledge just because of you, Dad, because you actually researched it. A lot of people don't always, especially coming from your generation. Y'all didn't have the internet like we do. Y'all couldn't just search something out at your fingertips,
Yeah, but I would assume it's not unusual, based on my generation, that when we had kids, the amount of knowledge as far as where food came from and having a garden in your backyard and all that kind of thing went away.
Yeah.
I know there was never a time, well, I can think of 2 years because we were living in Memphis, that we didn't have a garden when I was growing up. So, you had to go out and you had to work the garden and you had to, do those kind of things, which was even a drop off, from the generation back from me. Most people grew up on some type of farm or something in the South.
Mm-hmm.
But at least we had a garden consistently all the way through my, youth. And I know that, when you were born and Timmy was born, you didn't see a garden unless you went to my daddy's house.
Right.
Yeah. But at least he still had a garden. But that's kind of going away.
It is
for most of the country. And kids just, they don't know where a tomato came from. They don't know where an onion came from, and they couldn't tell you which one is above ground, which one's below ground when they grow.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have any idea. So
no.
It's a shame, and it's getting worse and worse.
It is. It really is. I do think eventually this Whole Foods movement is going to get much larger as more people get educated and more people are just sick of being sick. I do think, and I may not see it in my lifetime, but it's got to make a turnaround, or we're just all going to be dead by the age of 30 if we keep going the way we are, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess we can go ahead and wrap up. This was kind of a long discussion this morning, but I wanted to share that with y'all, and you should definitely go look up that video. Like I said, if you get on YouTube and you search Japanese school lunch, the first video that pops up is pretty good, but the second one is called Kaiyu Shoku, the making of a Japanese school lunch, and it's 22 minutes and 40 seconds, and it's just a really eye-opening video, and I recommend you just go watch it, and it'll definitely make you think, for sure, about the differences in America and there. So y'all go ahead and do that, and thank you again for listening. I hope that you're having a good weekend, and we'll be back tomorrow with our Sunday summary. Have a good one.